thank you very much, and if you permit me, I'm going to continue here for my next 4 minutes, which I have left due to the original program. I'm trying to be brief, and because I'm very happy that you all accepted to be here, and it's my turn to pay it back. So now we're going to talk about certain issues of international environmental law and really put it in a Central Eastern European perspective, because this is a field which is very close to my heart. So let's start with a few remarks. First is that international environmental law, at least I regard it as such, it is the field of international law with the most potentials. I know it's not really kind to say that towards other fields of international law, but I think that as it is relevant in one way or another for each and every state of the globe, it is something where the innovative solutions may sculpt the future of human nature or human beings at all. We are globally connected through many things, through climate, through the never-changing quantity of water on Earth, or through transboundary pollution, which may affect other states than the state of origin. So each and every day, every state may face these challenges, and practically everyone has done so already. So we know what we're talking about. We also know that many of these challenges stem from our own activities, and that very independently of the ideology of the nations, it is basically a human responsibility. Us as human beings, we are responsible for the world we are living in, and especially for the consequences of our own activities. Therefore, we have to be capable and liable to avoid danger, and if it has happened, to correct our errors. But of course, there's also something, a power above us, which teaches us that there are rules of nature which are unavoidable. Therefore, this is a field of international law which evolves very fast, but rightly so, because this is going to be of the future. The second remark which I would like to make concerns Central Eastern Europe. We are in a very similar situation. So Central Eastern European countries normally share the challenges of the other parts of Europe. But we have some specificities. And as in Central Eastern Europe, we mostly have the socialist heritage. There are certain things which are connected to international environmental law in this regard as well. We have to take this heritage with us. We try to solve it, but there are challenges which are going to be there not only for us or for our generation, but for our children and grandchildren as well. As we know, as those who lived in those areas, and I know that some of you are much younger than me, and you haven't witnessed it, and some of you are a little bit older, maybe older. So as we have witnessed, the socialist economy was not about sustainability. It was not even about profitability or rentability. There was a completely different logic behind the whole economy. And therefore, we know that we are facing challenges where nobody can really help, where it's only knowledge and money that can solve the cases. For instance, extreme soil pollution left behind in former socialist countries. People from this area know what we're talking about. It's not a specificity of Central Eastern Europe, because extreme profit orientation can cause the same consequences elsewhere in the globe as well. However, we have to try to correct these errors of the past. Maybe it was not us who committed it, but we have to live with it. And therefore, for instance, issues like Rust Belt zones, when people or governments try to create circumstances, frameworks where companies and individuals are also motivated to correct these past errors are, for instance, a good start in this regard. After these two remarks, I come to the keywords which are going to lead my very short presentation in the next few minutes. That is, given that I'm really committed to this field, international environmental law, let's put the notion of political reality and common sense into the picture. Why I'm saying that? When we go through the titles of the UN conferences, 1972, 1982, 92, and further on, then you're going to see that there's a slight change of focus. The very first, the Stockholm Conference has been called the UN Conference on Human Environment. Full stop. That was it. In 92, in Rio, it was already something else. It was the UN Conference on Environment and Development. And when we arrived to the Rio +20, the title was shortly UN Conference on Sustainable Development. Full stop. When you say this is a series, this is the same series, and we look at simply the title, then we see that there is something behind, which is far away from the ideology. Then this something is already written in the Stockholm Principles, and it's called state sovereignty and the interests of states. Without this principle, it would have been, I think, impossible to promote international environmental law among, globally, so worldwide. This is a very sensitive issue, but it was accepted throughout the decades. And we'll come back to the question of sovereignty a little later. Stockholm and Rio made many declarations which are pretty obvious for us right now and which have been pretty obvious at the time they were adopted. But there is one issue which I would like to address right now, which was in Rio Principle 8, and it was really just a few short words, and it concerned the demographic policies and the short reference to the connection of demography and environment. And this is an issue which concerns Central Eastern Europe very deeply, because I think all of you know that in order to maintain a society, the scientists are sure that a 2.1 fertility rate is necessary, meaning that, in a mathematical sense, everyone has to bear 2.1 children in order to maintain one society. In Central Eastern Europe, these numbers are tragically low. These numbers were as deep as 1.1 in certain countries. Although when regarding what these countries tried to do in the past few decades, 1, 2, or 3 decades, there were different attitudes towards this question. The states try to do something and try to make policies which change this decrease. Globally, of course, there was a decrease in the fertility rate, but let us admit that Central Eastern Europe was far left behind the European average as well. But so far we have seen a few changes. For instance, in the V4 countries, there is a constant increase due to certain steps that were taken. Still, this demographic question is related to other issues. Professor Karski has already mentioned the question of migration, which is also related to this issue. But now we would like to mention another one, which is, you know it very well, something which is called an ecological footprint, which also has to be taken into consideration. We can't be too proud of ourselves in Central Eastern Europe, but it's not that bad, I have to say. When you look at the comparison of states throughout the world, how many of us exist and how much we affect the environment we are living in, then we have to conclude that Central Eastern Europe is in a good position, and we have to continue with our efforts. but we're not in a bad place. I would like to refer to other contributions that were made today. For instance, Professor Kovács made the contribution about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and we have to admit that the former prosecutor already made a recommendation to include environmental crimes within the crimes of international law. So that was also a step which was taken. Professor Balcserzák mentioned the Gabčíkov-Nagymaros case. So I'm now going to skip all that I would have said about this issue. No, I'm kidding. There is a very strong will from the part of the states to continue with the efforts made since the Stockholm Declaration, that is, that states should maintain their sovereignty over their own resources, and their own interest should be taken into consideration. And therefore, I would like to mention you just one example, and this example concerns the questions of aquifers and groundwater within aquifers. This is an issue which shows that actually ideas which at first sight sound marvelous and so human and so sustainable may have something very different behind, and we should pay attention when trying to be very enthusiastic about international environmental law. I don't know if you have heard, but maybe you have already bought during the winter some tomatoes or cucumbers in the shops, and when you in the supermarkets you buy something like that. In Europe, the majority of it comes from a town called Valladolid, or at least a big part of it, which is a town in Spain. But California has the same role in the United States. These territories use a lot of groundwater when producing these, vegetables. And we are happy to have cucumber in January, but the very bad point is that groundwater is decreasing. And in these two territories, for instance, they have realized that they have exploited the majority of the groundwater which was in the aquifers, which was a good idea at the beginning, but they were exploiting it pretty fast. And the bad news is that groundwater in aquifers, they need 100 or several hundreds of thousands of years to come back. They come back. We have the same quantity of water on Earth, but they take really so much time. And therefore, when it happened in approximately a decade ago, then came the idea in international environmental law to say that groundwater in aquifers are a common heritage of mankind. At first sight, it sounds a wonderful idea. The only tiny problem is that such ideas come from territories where people, these states have already exploited the aquifers they already had in their territories, and now, after it was exploited, comes the wonderful idea that all the others who haven't done that so far, they should put it into the common, which is in general a good idea, but just an example that this or such ideas would make people and states very, very curious and doubtful about international environmental law if it takes such steps, because it's against common sense to do something like that. And I just would like to mention a few cases to you, at least just one, and that's only something which was very far away from Central Eastern Europe, but you're going to see what the relevance is for Central Eastern Europe, and that also connected to common sense and political reality. We have the cases throughout the international tribunals, such as the Gabčíkov-Nagymaros case, or the pulp mill case, or the Kisanganga case, where, of course, we have consequences, not only in Central Eastern Europe, but everywhere where we have shared rivers, for instance, or shared river basins. But the case that I would like to mention to you is a very popular one, among those who like animals. It's called the whaling case, and it is a case Australia against Japan, where Australia won against Japan, saying that the Japanese whaling activity in the Antarctica was against the international commitments made by Japan under the International Convention on Whaling. And when it came out in 2014, it was a win. It was an interesting case. Everybody who's interested, I recommend to read it because there are funny things. For instance, as the Central Institute of Japan, the International Citizen Research Institute, tries to explain that they had to kill 1,000 whales in order to detect how much the population of whales decreased in the past few years, with 1,000 at least, because then you killed 1,000. That such illogical things happened during this case, but of course they had their own traditions and they had their own logic why they followed this path. And when the judgment came out, they said, Japan said that, all right, we accept and we follow. After 1 year, there came the first reports that it's not really the case, and a few years passed, and Japan expressed that they're going to withdraw from the International Whaling Commission, and they stop their commitments, which has been done before. I said you this story because in 2014 I was one of the happiest people to read this judgment of the International Court of Justice because it was interesting, it was something I really waited for, and it was something that was a great step towards the protection of the environment. But on the other hand, as one grows up, one faces reality, that's common in all of us. Here we have to face reality as well. And the question is whether we have already found the ways to, at the same time, protect the environment and make states and all the actors who are in this field, of course, the economy, willing to participate in this common project, because we have one Earth, we have to share it, but maybe we have to try to pay attention to each other's interests in order to cooperate in a more successful way. Thank you very much for your attention.